Infatuation Podcast.
Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Infatuation Podcast, a special Friday side dish. We haven't done one of these for a while. These are the extra episodes. And the reason this is an extra episode is because we're talking about this film called Reunion, which is coming out, premiering next week in Beverly Hills at the Chinese Theater on Hollywood Blvd on April 16th. And so his team reached out and wanted to do this episode kind of quickly. And I said, of course. Yeah, so we can do a quick little 15, 20-minute episode. But as it turns out, it ended up a little bit longer. And I'll get to that in a second. But the movie, first of all, is called Reunion. And it's a case of mistaken identity where this guy, I guess he's like 38 years old now. And he's going back to his 20-year reunion. So shout out class of 2005. So he's going to his 20-year reunion, and he was the one Asian kid at his school, the public school, but he ends up going to the wrong reunion, and he was mistaken for the one Asian kid that went to that school. And that kid apparently turned into like this mysterious billionaire who was in tech and Bitcoin or whatever cyber currency, kind of made his billions and wanted to go back to his high school reunion and kind of show off and be the big man that he is now. But we find out that this one Asian kid was bullied and treated terribly at his high school, but now everyone wants to be his friend, right? And so this guy is an imposter, but he gets mistaken for the billionaire. And anyway, it's fun. It's kind of a farce. It's, it's got it's satire. It's got a lot of commentary on what it's like to be the one Asian kid at a high school. And that comes from John W. Kim's life, who is the writer and director and who we talked to. And like I said, it was supposed to be a quick little interview to talk about the film and the premiere. But it ended up to be much longer. And I was tempted to cut it down and do some hard edits and make it a little smoother. But John emailed me after the interview and was kind of apologetic, like, sorry I rambled so long. I hope you can edit it down. But you know what? I think I'm going to just leave it as is. It's a little long, but he said in his email that he was kind of thinking about what to say and it just started coming out, and he felt a little different with our podcast because he's been interviewed, dozens of times before, but not really by an Asian interviewer. And so he felt like he wanted to say some things that he couldn't say on other podcasts. And I'm here for that. If there's one reason why we started this podcast was to do Asians interviewed by Asians, right? Because there's not a ton of us out there doing this. And so he kind of got going and just said some stuff and was kind of train of thought, just free flowing. And I don't even remember if I asked a question, to be honest. But that's okay. He wanted to talk and I had a microphone. And so here we are. So I'm going to leave it as is. You can listen to it or not, up to you. This is a free country. This is a free podcast. But happy to do it. So happy to give John a chance to speak his mind, whatever was on his mind at the moment. Hope you enjoy it. It's kind of fun. I was smiling the whole time because he was just kind of whatever was on his mind was coming out of his mouth. And, sometimes we need that. Sometimes we need someone just to listen. And so if I was able to do that for him, then good. But you should definitely see this film. It is coming out in LA. It's also going to be at the LA Asian Pacific Film Festival on May 3rd. I'll put all these details in the show notes. I'm hoping it comes up here to the Bay Area. I think it will. It's really well done. It's a farce. It's fun. It's good laughs, but it's also deep. There's some deep commentary there within the film. So it's called Reunion. Go see it. If it comes to a film festival near you, definitely go see it. Hopefully it gets streamed sooner or later, but we'll see. It's still kind of early in the game for this film, so hopefully you get to see it in the theater. That would be the best case scenario. But all right, so I've yapped long enough myself. So we'll get to our chat with John right after this. And today I'm joined by writer and director. Were you an actor too at one point?
I was an actor when I was in college. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
actor, writer, director, John W. Kim. Hey, John, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Of course. I didn't know you were a Bay Area guy.
Yeah, I'm South Bay. I'm in the Mountain View area. I grew up in Palo Alto. I spent about 15 minutes in Los Altos Hills. And then I just kept migrating down the coast to Santa Cruz, then Los Angeles, and then I bounced and came back up.
Yeah.
Spent some time in Madera, California, beautiful city.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, Madeira. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
Madera, Fresno, represent. Yeah, Central Valley. Yeah, 110 degrees in the summer. Don't go there. Yeah.
But pretty much California your whole life, huh?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, I was born in Seoul.
That's right.
And then my folks came here in the early 60s. They started out in Chicago, and then they migrated to California. This was during, the NASA space programs, also
Okay.
during the military-industrial boom with the Vietnam War. So there was quite a bit of industry, a need for engineers, as there always seems to be in the Bay Area. And it just sort of, took off from there. And then they were very industrious.
Yeah.
They had escaped the Korean War. They had escaped
Uh-huh.
the North Koreans and the communists and some of the Americans. And
Yeah.
then, they were able to sort of build a life here, brick by brick, basically. And then, sort of build that sort of cocoon that most immigrants, I think, most immigrant families dream of, especially when they're coming from countries that are not as well off, and no one was as well off as the United States post World War II.
Yeah.
And even still today, even though the bulk of the wealth goes to the top 1% of people in the United States. So, that was sort of the part two of the immigration wave for Asians in post World War II era.
Yeah.
And my parents were part of that, near the end of that. And then the beginning, there was sort of a recalibration. But I think immigration, because it's been such a, hot topic lately and the worst, most dishonest conversations possible, the reality is that the United States has allowed immigration when it benefited them, when they needed labor, when they needed, productivity, sometimes when they needed population.
Yeah.
And as soon as that necessity sort of dried up, whether it was the 1850s or the 1970s, then the backlash against immigrants, whether it was World War II with the Japanese Americans or the 1970s against anyone who looked Asian,
Right.
because of the auto industry
Mhm.
meltdown at the time. And then today, we've seen it spread out to,
Yeah.
Mexican Americans, and then,
Sure.
collateral damage has been blacks and Asians, and just a number of horrendous things. We don't have to talk about all of them at once, but my parents were in that golden era where they were given opportunity and they took advantage of it.
Mm.
I know that you've talked in the past. You talked to the mayor of Monterey Park the
Yeah.
other day about the so-called model minority myth. I don't know that it was a myth so much as it was a restriction. There's always this desire to sort of define, the experiences of others. It's sort of like, it's sort of like the perfect wife, or domestic bliss, all of these imaginary things that don't really exist. Model minority was a label put on Asians, not by Asians, but by other Americans to sort of control um, this immigration, to let other people know that Asians
Yeah.
were safe,
Yeah.
that they were harmless. And then, of course, the burden of being harmless fell onto, the children of immigrants and immigrants themselves. And,
Yeah.
as you probably know, immigrants do not come to this country to commit crimes. They come here to work hard and pay taxes and send their children to colleges so they can be successful. There's a lower crime rate for immigrants that come to the United States than there are American-born, citizens. It's kind of a travesty to have that flipped on their head by people who are,
Yeah.
particularly biased and have a
Right.
political agenda. So I was lucky. I was lucky in that sense, and I was grateful. At the same time, I was growing up in a period of time near the end of the Vietnam War, where there was a tremendous amount of internal distress.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
Equal Rights Amendment, which spent 40 years being passed, and still is in turmoil every day. And I was thinking about that. The reason why, just briefly, if I could, I was thinking about that the other day. I was watching these kids at a parking lot that I was going to, shop in, and I know this is a apocryphal story, but um, they happened to be Asian kids, and they were in this, $80,000 SUV. The doors are open, and they're eating, sandwiches, like standing with their doors open in the parking lot. And for anyone who has looked for parking in the world, you know how irritating this is. And I have to say, and they looked a little stoned because why are you standing in the parking lot with your SUV open? Because you baked the SUV, right? Um, and I found myself enraged. You know,
Hmm.
for anyone who has experienced prejudice as an Asian American, for anyone who has been beaten up because they're Asian American, for anybody who has been mistaken for Japanese, Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese,
Mm-hmm.
and then to see these two lummoxes and just like eating on themselves, stoned out of their minds, and then taking up two parking spaces. And I don't know which is worse. And I had to really examine why I was so angry. They were like your high school students,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, these guys are so privileged that they don't even know what it's like to be oppressed. They they're
Yeah.
probably the kids beating up other kids in their school. This is who
Mm-hmm.
these kids are.
Yeah.
They're so entitled, they don't have to work and they can drive their mom and dad's car
Uh-huh.
and, feed their fat little faces in the Trader Joe's parking lot while I'm circling looking for a parking space. And I eyeballed these kids for a split second, and he tried to say something to me, but his mouth was full. And I was like, I'm not even going to slow down because if I circle back, something terrible is going to happen. And and I just realized, oh, but wait a second. Maybe this is a full circle moment. Maybe this is how much things have
We've
changed.
arrived.
Is that, yeah, now we can be lazy and stupid and absolutely privileged. Like, congratulations, we won.
Hey.
See, all we had to do was like wait a generation and a half, and now our children can be dumber and lazier than we are. It's like we've explored the immigrant experience.
Or we could be bullied
Um,
by our own kind, at least.
yes, yes, it's like we are equally stupid, and it's like,
Ah.
why
Hey.
doesn't that make me feel better? Well, I just walked away, and then I got like peaches or something. Anyway, but I think that every generation has to go through this, and every immigrant generation has to go
Mm,
through this. And as you probably know, every immigrant generation tries to create that separation and distance from the previous
mhm.
generation. Doesn't matter what generation it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever you thought was cutting edge when you were growing up, if you were listening to, you know, um, Michael Franti and Spirit, it's just like, but that was then, and now that's like old fashioned.
Right,
Like,
right.
and every generation needs to claim their generation for themselves, and that's a natural progression. What I think, though, is an issue is as I get older, because I am, um, without a sense of historical perspective, you don't have the ability to gain any sort of knowledge and translate it into wisdom. You can have knowledge about your own identity or your own era or agenda. I mean, there's a reason why you're standing in the parking lot blocking traffic, because you're establishing your individual rights. But you have no sense of where you're from and who you are.
Mm.
You want to be treated, you think you're born equal. And that's a fallacy that is expressed in the United States that's now being challenged constitutionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not born equal if you look different.
Yeah.
And if you don't acknowledge that, it's a sad thing. It's not any sort of triumph, but it's a universal thing that we who are separated by slivers of, chromosomes as a species, white, black, African, Asian, Latino, that the pigmentation of our skin is so important to us that it becomes the only thing as a point of contention to allow people politically to pit us against each other. And we're the same race.
Yeah.
If you go back far enough, I'm going to make an argument that I am distantly related to Miles Davis. I'm just going to make that argument.
Right.
I'm just going to say that. Because
Somewhere.
I think somewhere we're coming from the same seed someplace. And I like Miles Davis a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The greatest jazz band of the 20th century. So the idea there is just, so there is always this push and pull in the United States, I think, in terms of individuality versus communality. And that's really the challenge, because I had a Russian literature instructor by the name of Anya Croth at UC Santa Cruz, and she said, you Americans are so funny. You all want to be individuals, but you're all individuals in the same way. You
Yeah.
have the truck and you have the cowboy hat and you ride the horse on top of the mountain. I mean, she was Russian, so this is what she saw through her lens.
Sure.
It's like all of you are out there smoking cigarettes on the prairie. It's like, that's not, like, why are you doing that? And she came from a culture, society, obviously, where there was no such thing as individuality. You were Russian.
Yeah.
And you waited in line and you got whatever it was at the end of that line, and then you got into the back of the line and you started over again, because that's how you survived as a Russian. And I think that, my philosophy popped up the other day. I was thinking about your podcast and I was thinking to myself, what can I bring Curtis? What would be something that is absolutely something he doesn't want to talk about politically, and something I really want to talk about? And because I know you're trying to be a good Asian, Curtis. I respect. Although I don't think that your school wants you to be doing podcasts in the biology room. But the idea there is, what I was thinking is, and I want to bounce this off you. It's like, I think when you're Asian in this culture, and there is sort of the model of how you're supposed to behave, whether you like it or not. Even Tiger Mom is a form of behavior. The people latch onto, and it's like, that's stupid. Like, why do you want to have like a Nazi mom? Like, don't say that's a good thing. People think, oh, the people like, oh yeah, that's a good thing. Like, this is why I'm the way I am, because I had a Tiger Mom. It's like, that's terrible. Your mom plays tennis. Like, she's not like that. But the idea is, in my mind, when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, the idea was that it came to me that if you're Asian in this country, you almost have a heightened sense of normalcy. At a certain point in time, you know more than anyone else what is normal. More than American-born Americans, more than African Americans, because they're under this horrendous, oppression, in terms of stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, like, there's seam where you're supposed to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, so if it's a meritocracy, then you want to be the best in your class. You want to be 1, 2, 3, and you don't want to be 3, right? If you are a woman, girl, you want to sit and be quiet and hold your hands, right? And if you're a boy, you want to answer every question first. every math question anyway, which is super annoying for people who are not good at math. Don't hate people. Some Asians do not like math, and they are bitter about it. Uh, and uh, and then and then incidentally, you get the things that are attractive within the mainstream of American culture, like athletics or beauty, or and then there's the tertiary elements, which are the degraded parts of American culture, which Asian Americans also partake in, which is you know drug usage and swearing and thinking differently, which is exciting. Once you get to that level where you can actually establish your independence, like you look at that and you go, I like that, because it pisses off a lot of people that I don't really want to talk to anyway. Like, this is my group, you know? Um, and I was thinking that the other day, and I don't want to say more so than other, ethnic groups, if you want to call it that. But I think that when you're Asian, there is that additional burden. And it is because of these sort of canards like, um, you know, model minority. I don't know what the hell that means. I mean, that's just stupid. That's a stupid label given by white people to oppress Asians. That's really what it is. How come blacks aren't model minorities? How come Michael Jordan isn't a model minority? That's a good model minority, you know? Um, and it's really just to keep Asians in line. And that's been the case for 20 or 30, even this idiotic thing with COVID, where it was like, oh, it's the Chinese flu, like the Chinese did it. It's like, yeah, but you brought it and you spread it and then you caught it and you almost died. Doesn't that have any impact on you whatsoever? 1.5 million people dying. It's like, well, yeah, but it's the Chinese. It's like, all of them? Do they all, like in Guangzhou, like that guy, the farmer in the rice paddy, that's the guy who brought COVID here? I don't think so. And then you have these idiocies where you have people who are not very bright and violent and angry, beating up on Chinese, Japanese, Asian, Vietnamese.
It doesn't matter,
Korean.
yeah.
For what? Why?
Yeah.
Well, because, I'm mad. It's like, yeah, but you're mad because your leader is stupid and he's starving you. Like 10% of Americans own 88% of stock.
Right.
That's wealth, pure wealth. That's why the stock market goes up and down while we're bombing Iran. It's like, are we going to have oil or not have oil? I don't know. It doesn't matter because we have oil. But other people, they'll be upset. They'll buy less bologna, And I'm sorry to be off track on this. I promise to come back. But the reason why I made Reunion to a degree is because I didn't pursue an acting career in college because I looked around and I said, there are no Asian actors.
Yeah, there's no roles.
In the 70s and 80s, there were none.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you wanted to count like the Japanese and Chinese actors who are pretending to be Korean on MASH, which is just an abomination.
Or if you're good at martial arts or something,
Yeah, or martial arts, which are not American movies. Bruce Lee, they wouldn't even let Bruce Lee do martial arts in America. Bruce Lee had to leave the country to become a movie star. That's how bad it was. And they wouldn't even let him do Kung Fu. That's how bad that was.
Yeah.
David Carradine had to do Kung Fu. I like David Carradine a lot. I watched Kung Fu. Don't get me wrong. Key Luke was in it. But Bruce Lee would have made better,
Of course,
Kung Fu.
yeah.
So anyway, so the idea there is that in the back of my mind, in a very modest way, I thought, I want to see somebody that looks like me. Jake Choi, a very good Korean American actor.
Great actor.
And I just thought, I want to see, just like, it shouldn't be a revolutionary act to put a Korean American in a film made by a Korean American that's not about the Korean War. Now, I have Korean War stories that I want to make that I can't get financed because it's about the Korean War. Nobody wants to, see that movie. I want to see that movie. But that was a small part of it. And then to put that in the, shell of, a traditional classical mistaken identity farce, like Tartuffe, like the Inspector General, like Being There, and just say, what happens when you don't have an identity and people foist an identity on you? And that's really what the story of Reunion is all about.
Yeah.
And then the secondary element of it sociologically or culturally is these stories also, hinge on the people in these communities, whether they are, societies or villages or, Washington, D.C., where people, they project their hopes and desires onto an individual. And I think that's what's happening actually today politically, is that people look at these political leaders, one in particular, and they say, that is an aspirational figure. That's somebody who knows how to run a business. That's somebody who will shake up Washington, D.C. And what he's really doing is he's dismantling it for, profiteering.
His own purposes.
I'm not going to name any names, but just open your eyes, click on the New York Times for 10 minutes. And it's sort of like, but the desire to have a savior be a panacea for your life is so great. There's a wonderful Bud Schulberg short story called Table at Zeros, which I highly recommend. It was made into a short film for PBS like 30 years ago. Darren McGavin is in it. And it's a story about a man who is the head of a film studio in the 1930s. It's during the sort of Gatsby
studio era,
studio era, Thalberg era. And what happens is that through the lens of this character and then everyone around him, they project their hopes and dreams onto this person. There's the hat check girl who wants to be a starlet, and there's the waiter who has a script to a movie, and then there's the mistress who is having an affair with a young star. And there are all these machinations, and then in the middle of it is this studio head who is trying to comport himself like somebody important. And of course, it takes place at the legendary Ciro's in Los Angeles. And I think I was fascinated at that story at an early moment. And I thought to myself, what if you took someone like In Being There or In Table at Ciro's or Inspector General and you place him in the middle of nowhere, which is where we begin the story, and you give him no skills. He is good at embalming fluid. That's his skill.
And he's not even that great at that, to be honest.
Not really. I mean, if the body that you're treating speaks to you in the middle of the treatment, you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
And just like I wanted to see where that journey took him. And then the other part of it is I wanted to explore what are these hopes and dreams that we all have. And I know that we used a lot of sort of, iconic characters like, the athlete and the prom queen and the class president. But also I wanted to give them a little bit of humanity, with the actors that we had with Candy Clark, Madeline Zima, Crystal Rivers, plays our differently abled actress Rose, without over explaining who they were, Sarah Weissman, just to be able to say like, oh, these people have hopes and dreams too. Like what happens to these supporting characters in these stories, and why is this so important to them? Why does it matter so much to, Kelly Garner, who plays Lena, who gives a, great performance. It's like, they say they don't want things, but they really do.
Everyone has an agenda.
Yeah, exactly right. And then she gets angry about it, which is, of course, very in character. But, and that's sort of what I wanted to explore. And then, of course, the added challenge, as you know, is that we had to do it under the skin of, the Eaton fires in Los Angeles and the Palisades fires. And we had to do it with a limited budget. We brought the best cast together that we could at the time. Fred Roos, our executive producer, legendary casting director, unfortunately passed away in the process, which made it much more complicated and challenging to cast. But we just wanted the best performers to bring humanity to these roles. And we gave them a lot of latitude. Franz Lawton, for example, who plays Brad, who could easily be like the secondary character in a movie, became really important to us because he's the only Black voice in this privileged white private school. And we didn't want him to be stereotypical. We wanted him to surprise you. And we wanted him to say something different than what you would hear in any other film. We didn't want it to be cliche, and we wanted to give him his say. And after working with him, and, talking about the character, he was able to work with us to put something together that we thought was appropriate. And we came back and we shot that after principal because we felt it was really important. And I know there was a lot of argument about it in post-production, but I thought, no, you have to listen to these people's voices. Otherwise you just have, black and white melodrama, comedic or otherwise, and that's not that interesting.
Yeah.
If you don't include other people's voices, you have a very boring life. It's like eating the same food every time you go out. Like, don't do that. Don't do that to yourself, I mean, there's 450 cuisines. Like, have some paella. It's okay. It's not going to hurt you, unless you're allergic to shellfish. So anyway, that's my spiel. And that's part of the impetus that we had for making that film. And
well, digging into that even further,
Yeah.
so Palo Alto in the 70s and 80s,
yeah,
is that an experience where you were the Asian guy and easily confused with one other Asian, the only other Asian guy at Monte
there's
Vista
an
or
Asian
something?
guy in every class, and there's an Asian girl, and that's it. That's what
Yeah.
you get.
Yeah.
And it's not like today, like you go to a little high school in
Right.
San Francisco, which is 70% Asian, like the preeminent public school in San Francisco.
Or even Pali High or Gun or
Pali High and Gun even today. Like,
Yeah, right.
It's competitive,
Yeah.
and, I won't make any, cast any aspersions about it, but it's competitive. And there are
Sure.
many, 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 many Asian families. Asian families, as you probably know, are gravitated towards surprisingly good jobs and good schools. What a shock.
Yeah.
Like, what is the secret recipe for American success? And but in the 70s it was different. I mean, I think I saw some number. It was like in the triple digits about how many Korean Americans there were in Northern California. I think it was like under 1,000 in a period of time. And, contrary to popular belief, I know it's shocking, Korean is different than Japanese. And Japanese is different than Chinese. And Vietnamese is different from Cambodian. And if you get that far, you're already in a conversation. You've lost people already. But I can say without any sort of distinction that I was the only Korean American all the way through grade school and junior high school. There might have been another Korean American in high school, in a 1,600 student high school. If there was, I didn't know who they were. They might have been a transfer student for all I know, and it sort of sits in the back of your head, and so not that I'm proud of this, but I think that there was a little bit of myself in high school. My family was, breaking up a little bit, and in the American way. And I think there was a little bit of acting out, for me. My going into theater instead of continuing on playing tennis and basketball, like that was acting out. It's like, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not standing in line waiting to hit a ball. Like, I want to do something else. And I think for my parents, it was kind of like incomprehensible. It's like, why are you doing this? And I was actually the lead in the school play. And they were like, well, that's fun for 10 minutes. Like, they didn't even care. I mean, they went to see the play, which was already a miracle. And it's like, oh, this has no impact on you at all, And I just thought, well, but this is what I care about, and I was lucky enough also in the 70s that I grew up with some of the great American films of that era, The Godfather and All the President's Men and Dog Day Afternoon, and I ended up 40 years later, 30 years later, working as a teaching assistant for Frank Pearson, who wrote Dog Day Afternoon for Sidney Lumet and Al Pacino. And I just started to realize, oh no, the world is a little bit smaller. I mean, it's huge, but you can actually see the other side of the earth from here, but it took me a long time because if that's not part of your culture, if it's discouraged at every turn, which it is, Your parents did not want you to be a podcaster, Curtis. I'm sorry, I hate to say that. They did not say, when my son grows up, he's going to be a top 5 podcaster
Right.
in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. You go, son.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm just channeling some a little bit of frequency there. And my parents were just like, "What are you doing?" And like every 5 or 10 years, they'd say, like, "When are you going to do something else?"
Get a real job. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not even a real job. Just do something
Something.
else. Like I'm not really going to be an engineer. Have you seen my grades? Like I was in a shop with my dad at Backrack, which they ended up sending components to the moon, which was a big deal if I'd known about it. And I remember looking at all these bolts and wires, which is what engineering was in the 70s. And it's like, I'm not going to spend 10 minutes in this hangar with bolts and wires. Like, I'm just not, there's nobody to talk to. There's no music. I mean, the food's bad. Like, why am I here? And, I have books to read, and I was able to read books, across the street from my house at the public library in Palo Alto, Mitchell Park, which they've ruined by their remodel, but it was wonderful then. There was a baseball stadium, park right next to it, so I could play Little League ball for up until I was 12 or 14, Babe Ruth. And that was enough, in Palo Alto and Mountain View, and I lived in Palo Alto up until, high school. There were like 5 movie theaters,
Yeah.
all independent. It was
Yeah.
amazing. It was like the
Yeah.
golden age. There was no streaming. There was no
Right.
VHS. You could go to a theater, and
You
there would
had
be
to
like
go to a theater.
2 Revival House theaters, not 1, but 2.
Yeah.
And then there would be like every movie you wanted to see. And then there would be a theater. I remember this is how much this dates me, but there would be a theater down the street in Mountain View, and we couldn't afford to go to the main screenings, but it was a second run theater, and you could go on a Tuesday night, which is very specific because it's the cheapest night to go, and you could go for 50 or 25 cents and go and watch a double bill of a movie that you probably couldn't have seen 2 weeks earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it was just like, and so my mother, very, cost conscious, would take her son out, at 7:00 in the afternoon, 7:00 at night, and go see these movies.
Mhm.
And it didn't even matter what the movie was. Like, oh, I'm outside
Yeah. Yeah.
with my mother. It's a miracle, And then I was able to go to R-rated movies every birthday when I was 11, 12, 13, 14. And the R-rated movies at that time were like The Godfather,
Yeah. Yeah.
or like Blazing Saddles, which is not a movie you should see with your mother. Or like, Serpico, or, just crazy, crazy movies. Even, movies that are sort of half off and on, like Looking for Mr. Goodbart, which is not a movie you should see with your mother.
Yeah.
Hard R movies in the 70s. But, it's like, and I think that along with that idea of what shapes you when you're an outsider looking in, which you are when you're Asian, don't let these kids in the parking lot fool you. It's like you look at what is normal. And what was normal to me was being able to read great books and read Shakespeare and David Mamet and Anton Chekhov, and then go to the movies and see Al Pacino and Marlon Brando and, Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford and All the President's Men, bringing down a presidency, which I think is a tradition we should bring back. And then, as a teenager, you're watching like Richard Nixon get impeached and resign. And it's like, wow, this is kind of very dynamic. Okay. So like many, many other things are possible here. It's very clear, you know. Um, and then the stop point for me was when I wanted to continue acting, and I wasn't stupid. I took a look around and said, oh, there's no one who looks like me. There's
Mhm.
none chance. And today
Yeah.
we have this wealth of really fine, talented actors. We have Steve Yeun, we have Jake, we have Michelle Yeoh from Hong Kong cinema, Tony Leung. We have movie stars, but in the 70s and 80s in the United States, there was nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, you were lucky if there was a scene in a Chinese restaurant,
Right.
and there were no Koreans, because what's a Korean? I think they're doing a tribute this year to Christine Choi, who wrote and directed the great documentary Who Killed Vincent Chin.
Right.
And I think we know an actor who's trying to get that developed as a feature, which I hope they're able to do. But the fact that people were so angry about Asian Americans unnecessarily because their government had let them down in Detroit, and they killed a Chinese person who they thought was Japanese and responsible for the Asian invasion.
Yeah.
Speaks to the incredible stupidity and careless tragedy of what it was like to be Asian during that period of time. This is just a guy who wanted to go out to a strip club for his
bachelor party,
which is not a good idea anyway.
Right.
But, there's nothing more American than going to a strip club for your bachelor party. I mean, that's the whole premise of The Hangover, for God's sakes. And for him to be beaten up by a guy he beat up first, to be fair, and then for this guy to get let off with, slap on the wrist because it was Detroit. People were angry.
Yeah. 1989.
And these were auto workers.
Yeah.
Father and son, nothing like tradition.
Right.
And that speaks to a kind of, that is the thing that sits under the model minority prejudice, is that I don't think that you just sit and shut up when you're being beaten to death by angry bigots, by ignorant fools. And I feel like, we've seen enough of this, birthright citizenship argument that is really just a disguise for a kind of a ethnic cleansing in the United States right now.
Yeah.
And sort of like, who are you who stole land from Native Americans to decide who is a citizen of this manufactured country? Let's have 9 people that look like you take a vote. And it's like, what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
Sonia Sotomayor notwithstanding, it's like, what are we really doing here? This sounds like a hanging judge, sort of situation. And it's very sad. It shows how incrementally far we've come. But the fact that if you embrace actual knowledge and actual belief in, wisdom, information that is based in reality, I think it's okay to take a step back and say, what do we really believe in? You have all these people who profess to believe in Jesus Christ. I think those are good philosophies. Maybe the execution is not so great, but this is not what Jesus would do.
No.
It's not what Buddha suggests. Confucius has a different point of view. You cannot actually find a religion that professes to be prejudiced against other groups because of their skin color or their birthplace.
Yeah.
Let alone acknowledge that there's possibility that Christ was a little darker skinned than we would all like to admit, at least in certain circles. We're not going to have that conversation in the United States. So, because Santa Claus is white, right? So the idea there is just, where are we stuck in this evolutionary cycle? And for me, I do think that the artist, the filmmaker, the podcaster, we do have a role, because our job is to tell the truth. Our job is to hold up a mirror and have a reflective representation of what is going on. You cannot help but be a reflection of the time that you live in. If you are a filmmaker, if you're an artist, whatever you're doing is either an ignorance of the time that you're living in or is being impacted. There can be no middle ground.
You can't be neutral.
If you are interviewing people, you're choosing to have this podcast is a political act. Whether or not you want to delve into politics, the fact that you are saying, oh, there might be some value in the 4.5 billion people who live on the earth who happen to be Asian. And here's a small subsection who live here, might be within a stone's throw of Monterey Park, that we could have a conversation with. And maybe through osmosis, people might understand that there is some value in an experience that is separate from their own, that is not a Kardashian, you know? And it's sort of like, that's one value system. How about another value system? How about all the people who don't get to be Kardashians? You know, how about the people who don't get to choose a political side and hammer, you know, people who are already oppressed into the ground, you know, with a political mallet the size of Armageddon? You know, like, what is the value of someone who has lived through these experiences and now we are here? You know, and then just have a glimpse. And for me, I feel like any conversation you can have with people, any kind of story that you want to create. I have a filmmaker I've worked with. She did some of the art direction for Reunion. Her name is Sam Aotaki, and you should remember that name. Very talented young woman, and she is just dynamic. She is a up and coming star, I believe. I think she's going to be in our next film, The Request, which is a dark neo-noir thriller with an Asian American lead. And everything about her says that she is not what you expect. She can fit any stereotype you want, and then the answer is no. I'm not doing that. I'm not who you think I am. And then she'll do something in her work that is absolutely surprising. And that's the future, because you don't have to be your mother and father's model minority. You know, you don't have to be the guy who waits in line politely. You can jump and make trouble. You know, you can be Rachel Yamagata. You can be Vienna Teng. You can be, you know, there's a great, very funny Australian actor. He's in the show called Fisk, which is absolutely hilarious. And he's just this sort of milquetoast Australian Asian. And it's weird to hear that accent. And he sits there and he just is as lazy as can possibly be on that show, but he's still a little bit smarter than everybody who comes to his desk. And it's just like a different kind of a stereotype. It's like sideways and backwards. I think he has a TV special out now. Or you have somebody like Ronnie Chang. And, you know, there's not 5 people funnier than Ronnie Chang, you know, or Bowen Yang. And it's sort of like, oh, okay. Like, you think what you want, and these people will sit around and make fun of you because that's their job now. You know, and it started with somebody pioneering like Margaret Cho, who came out and said, yeah, this is who I am. My parents ran a pornographic video shop and bookstore, and I've got tattoos all over my legs and body, and I can still talk trash to you and not skip a beat, and I'm funny than anyone that you've ever seen. And we're just going to continue this conversation until you get really uncomfortable, and then you're going to start to laugh. She's been doing this for 20 years now. And I trace every Asian American comedian back to her. There can be no doubting it.
She's the godmother,
She is the godmother, absolutely. So anyway, so I don't know if that leads you on any tangents, but that's the thing is, this is the thing, is that I've given so many of these podcast interviews, and I've to get the film out to San Jose and, you know, the Bay Area, and now we're going to Beverly Hills, and it's sort of like, I was at a point where it's like, oh, am I sick or am I tired? It's like, oh, you're both. And then I thought, but I realized that in trying to talk around what Reunion was to me, that I started to realize, like, oh, I have things to say about this movie. Like, the subconscious reasons why. Like, people always ask, why did you make this movie? It's like, well, it started in, you know, 1999 or whatever. But really, it was like, there's something in your subconscious that, you know, somebody like Carl Jung would say. It's like, there's something in the back of your mind that wants to get out. There is that shadow self. And I think with Asian Americans, you want to be a good son. You want to be, a dutiful child because you want to pay respect. If you're a sentient human being, you want to pay respect to who you are and where you came from. And then I feel like you have a responsibility to fulfill what that destiny is because your parents already struggled. Your parents already went through the shit. Your parents already were treated badly and were denied jobs and positions and houses and made fun of. And you were made fun of too. But they didn't do that so people could continue to make fun
Keep
of you.
going on it. Yeah.
So people
Yeah.
could sit on your shoulders. Like I don't think that's any kind of liberation. One of the best moments I had is my mother was able to see these screenings. She went to both screenings. She was like, why? And she went and she was like, that was better than I expected. And it's like,
Hey,
and as an Asian
that's an Asian
American,
compliment. Yeah.
that is the greatest compliment. It's like, so
It wasn't
and to me,
terrible.
that's enough. Like I'm already like everything else is gravy, Curtis, at
Yeah.
this point. But I think that as an obligation, because the problem with human beings is that we only know what we have experienced. Our parents only knew what they experienced, And so their imagination was limited by their knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But when you come into a world 70s, 80s, 90s, and you look around and say, holy shit, what is this? Armageddon? It's like, yes, climate Armageddon. And then war, crazy person in the White House, second into series. And then it's sort of like, okay, so what is possible? And somebody just opens the door. And all you have to do is walk through that door. And it's really scary because that door could be a cliff and you don't know. But the thing is, you don't know. And so even I have a daughter, very smart, beautiful, talented, intelligent. And every once in a while I catch myself saying, oh, don't do this, do that. And it's like, who am I to give her advice? Like, she's already survived me. She survived this. Like,
Yeah.
do what you want, but do it with a little bit of passion. Care about it enough so that you're proud of it. Succeed or fail, it doesn't matter. I don't care. And I think for our generation, because we're sort of the 1.5, we're like the transitional generation. It's like, okay, mom, I'm going outside now. I'm looking both ways. And then I'm going to run across the street and jump into the lake, and our kids or the people around us, the young folk, I think they're just like, how do I helicopter over that lake? Where can I get a chopper right now?
Yeah.
I want to start with a chopper and then we'll work backwards. And it's like, oh, well, maybe something good will happen because it can't possibly be any worse. I mean, look. Anyway,
John, I got a class coming in, so I got to wrap this up.
I respect it.
All right, so I'll shout out the details in the show notes. I'll write out the details in the show notes. People can check this out. Where are we at? We're at Beverly Hills.
Beverly Hills, April 16th at the Chinese Theater, 8:50.
That's gonna
and
be
then
cool.
We're gonna have a screening in Monterey Park on May 3rd at the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival. It'd be great to see people there. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, John. And that was writer-director John W. Kim. Go see the film. I hope you get a chance to see that film in the theaters. I'll drop the dates in the show notes. So I guess that does it for us. If you're still listening, thanks for sticking with us. On behalf of John and myself, we hope that you're all happy, healthy, and safe out there. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye, everyone.